Hello, everybody. We are gathering today to talk about CERT hybrid. How can we accompany the different CERTs created? Hello, I am Alexandre Cabral. I'm the director of SOC and CERT of Sopra Steria. My name is Nicolas Grama of Operation Directors of Sopra Steria. Let's begin right now. The context is known, I guess. Just as a refresher, what is the state of affairs? There is an increase, a strong increase of cyber attacks. COVID just accelerated the trend, and home office and dematerialization and so on. More than half the companies are victims. The others, it doesn't mean they don't have attacks. They might not see it or there are no consequences. 50% is a lot, and it's concerning. Start number one is government and public sector. The rest of the industry has not been forgotten. And on the podium, it is nowadays the public services. And in order to meet this growth, there's another growth. There's a lack of talent. Everybody would like to recruit cybers, recruit on detection, response. There are no profiles, no talents. 7,000 open jobs in APEC 2021, 5,000 2022. Job offers, it is accelerating. There is an increase of training sessions, but before the trainees come to the market and come up to speed, some time is going to go by. We really are lacking an ecosystem ready to react. Let's deep dive. What do the hackers? There is a professionalization of the attacks. On APT level, it was always very professional, but cyber criminality is really becoming almost industrial. Geopolitics plays a role. Before, during, and after a conflict, there are cyber attacks. It is very fertile for cyber attacks. And there is a conversion around tools, the advanced attacks and the cyber criminal attacks. They use the same tools, the same methods, or very similar. Sometimes it's just to mask where they're coming from. Others is just to use the good practice of the others. So we are really confronted with attackers and hackers who are reaching excellence. This is what we all see. And in a CERT, how do we react? What is a CERT or C-CERT? What are their missions? They are being represented like as the ANSI or the first DOS internationally. As a summary, we could say it's handling major incidents, or what we call almost a near miss or a cyber crisis. Then there is the handling and controlling vulnerability, critical vulnerabilities around the information system. The knowledge of the threat is there. It is moving. They are increasing and improving their methods. They're very efficient. Then detection between SOC and CERT, there are no borders almost, because we need to be efficient, especially for ransomware attacks. And we need other services like awareness raising, risk analysis, rapidly deploy configuration. And therefore, processes are needed, management is needed, and a lot of competence. skills. We need to be a specialist of a work. It's not the same as a specialist of detection. Sometimes there are borders or barriers between SOC and CERT. Some consider it's not the same work. It's very equivalent functions, though. And then there is the intelligence of the threat, which is again different. So when you try to build a CERT, it's really time-consuming to reach maturity over so many services and with the skills, the internal skills to be able to answer. The method we would like to show and speak about is trying to answer those challenges. Let's have a look at what the tools are for a CERT director. There are external resources, hardware or software. The person exists. He can work with this person. The person can be knowledgeable of the organizations. However, I can only, it's difficult to use somebody for only 2 hours. And then the scaling is different. If all of a sudden there is a crisis and we need a lot of people, it's not a good model. This is rather good for cycles of 3-4 months. It's not very dynamic. And then in terms of service, this is much more dynamic. We could have a large panel of skills because it is the outside sourcing who provides this. It's a quick intervention. However, it's black box kind of approach. We don't know what is behind. It's not easy to understand everything. The capitalization is not easy because you get the result, but it does not participate and doesn't share all the information. And it's a very heavy mechanism when you face internal, external threats. It's difficult to know who this service is. And in terms of confidentiality, it might be very expensive. These are the 2 options. The third path is hybrid. So the weakness of the hybrid part is that if I try to bring those 2 worlds together, it's difficult because of the work organization culture is different between the 2 modes, between an MSSP and an internal team. There might be different tools on either sides. However, the positive side is internally, people know what they need to control, and internal service keeps the ability to do external scalability. Today, we might have 1 major or 2 major accidents per year for bigger organization. However, as soon as a internal team is having this experience, how do I work, however, if there are 4 or 5 services a year who are facing an incident? So hybrid was interesting, but we were missing the technology to be able really to put everything in common. These are the organization of a classic CERT with an internal organization and an external organization. And in terms of tools, there are differences too. The choice of the products is different, the technologies used are different. To work together is a bit complicated. Therefore, we built a method enabling everybody to keep his own specifications and specifics and to change the methodology. So it's a method above processes, and let me explain how it works. These methods, first step is the standards of the industry. They are agnostic of tools. We identified 2 organisms who are building up standards recognized and well spread. One is MIT, Mitre, Defun, Mitre and Gage, the whole chain. There's CAPEX, WE, that were created by Mitre at the beginning, at the origin. This is the background, the content. And then we need some structure to change the data. And this is where at OpenOasis we'll find different formats like Sticks, Kakao, that enable to exchange information on action plans, on the threats, on incidents, on other issues. Today, we are partner of this organism. We are influencer of the formats, like, for instance, the incident text format has a scale of confidentiality, traceability that is very much influenced by yeah. This standard basis is really important to have something common in terms of tools and for the external and internal teams. This meets a first problem. How do internal and external teams work together? It's very native. Even if there are different tools, we can exchange data. We have to adapt the different protocols like TLP to guarantee the confidentiality circles, the TLP to guarantee that we are working only on data, the right data. And then we have a common terminology between the MSSP back office and the internal team to activate on these subjects. Then we need to work on the organizational side. One of the big problems between SOC and the CERT, be they external or internal, is the mission. The mission of a CERT is to stop the impact. It's really much at the end. The SOC is rather to detect, it's rather the beginning of the chain. So the missions are not the same on a timeline. And then on the organizations, we see very often a segmentation depending on the mission, on the task. We recommend to work on the mission and the responsibility to do so. This depends what you prefer. And the second is the interdependency. If me as a SOC, I don't need a CERT, I don't work with a CERT. If I don't need a SOC when I'm CERT, I won't do though. And it's the same for external internal. This is a key issue because with such an internal-external relationship, we can begin. We can decide that the other does an investigation or so. I would like to know what is happening on my non-critical scope and ask MSSP to work on this. And I'm focalizing on what is more important for my own organization, the key processes and the supports. And at the end of the day, I know I'll have the results that will help me to have a global vision and a real vision of what is going on in my organization while I respond to an incident. It is complementary and we do not cut it into chunks. The idea is to have a coherence between the formats, the contents, and the way to work. The objective is the target, is the result. It's not the task. How do we control all this? Is through the methods. The standards will help us to decide if I have this type of attack, these are the data I have, and these are the actions I have. This will help for the decision-making process. This decision is a collaboration between external and internal. Very often it's difficult to make a decision in these difficult moments. When I'm internal, it's easier. It's difficult because I will have to cut business, but delegating this decision-making process to another external entity is difficult. If I don't have a framework with a common language to tell him in this specific case, I delegate the authorization to act to you, but then there is a time loss in the decision-making process. And this is a problem if you have a ransomware in front of you, and then the problem gets bigger. We might be sometimes spending nights to cut off assets. But as we are using same language and we have the same language tree, we can make the decision alone and to really be helpful to the organization that has been attacked. It's for the internal organization, it's easier to be piloting tactically and strategically regarding mass effects. This approach only works with cyber professionals. This is important to be underlined. All the decision all the decision made need to be aware of the type of the threat and the profile of the threat. If it looks 80% like a group or 80% a ransomware group, my decision on the next step will be completely different. This is what we call the CERT hybrid framework. It's very well documented. All the different grids are there for the learning process. And this is answering another request. We need to be hybrid. When we work on organization, it's very much at the beginning of the creation of a team. And with this new method we bring in, we accelerate the maturity of the internal team members that will be recruited one after the other during the next following months. And we give you this framework that enable you to say, I am capable of handling these processes at this level of maturity. The other process, I will leave it in the CERT hybrid of Sopra. Tomorrow, we will be able to work on a full mature capacity. However, I will orient it only to my scope, most substantial scopes, and maybe the branches in the abroad to external. There might be some emergencies at the same times, but I don't have to change my organization because I have an interface and a common terminology, common interface, and it enables me to pilot, understand what they are doing. This visibility needs to be clear on either sides. Let's take an example. This is a major incident. What is this? This is before the crisis or at the beginning of crisis. Usually you don't know. It's one of the definitions we like to say. It's an incident where the impact is still under control. We need more or less that is going to be harmless, but it's not going to be completely a death sentence for the organization. So the crisis is still ahead. On major incidents, the internal teams will have to coordinate the investigation, the response, or send out different orders to the SOC requesting for specific information. And then we will have to estimate the impact. Then we will set up objectives, a posture. This is where this threat intelligence is important. If it's a ransomware, my posture is rather, I cut everything where I see him. When it's espionage, I'll have spying, I'll have to eliminate by trying to impede exfiltration. Then there are response plans moving depending on what is going on, and then we will launch these actions. Once the action is over, the incident is over, we'll have to draw conclusions. As long as we have 10 people and not multiple incidents, everything's running smoothly. But what happens when we are facing more and more accidents? It's an increase of 400% nowadays. The RAM curve is the same. The old former director of the ANSI says it is exponential, the trend. Sometimes I have to do to make decisions, and incidents can be dealt with by the external service for the governance, for the posture, and so on. And then I figure out that it has critical impacts. I need to take over again. This process, there are breaks I trust MSSP, but other parts I prefer to do it internally because I have to make the right decisions. In a hybrid mode, we have a team member very near to the client, accompanying the client in this phase of decision making, and who is also working on specific missions to help out internal teams on specific issues. It is working per task, per mission, not always a task with a specific result, because otherwise any task needs to be exploited, needs to be traced, and so on. Thanks to this model, your front office helps us to consume useful information directly. We all know that in a case of an incident, in a major incident, it's always complicated to take over from something else. The advantage of standards and methodology is you understand, you know, you don't have to reflect why did he write his report this way, that way. It is structured and information comes into the tool directly. The objective is to know where do I need expertise, why do I need to find outside, where are my results, with the explanation. I'll have to work on EDR, and I'll be piloting rather quickly without interruption. Seamless. Everybody shares the same mission, and I don't have to check whether everybody's working on its own mission. Everybody knows what needs to be done and needs to be achieved. I hope this is clear. On other services, we have the same type of methodology. This is our conclusion now. 30 minutes is rather short for explaining our methodology. However, it answers those three challenges: share responsibilities. We worked per mission, not per task. Second, improve interdependency, encourage interdependency, making sure that data coming from a service are interested for the other service and that internal and external will be able to communicate. And thirdly, be compliant to standards. At the end, this is very important for the sustainability of the organization, because the model of the full MSSP, and we are MSSP, which I should not do this, is to shut you, is to lock you. No, with this methodology, we accompany the maturity and the growth of your organization, and it is compliant to standards, which makes it even easier to duplicate or deploy to other parts of the organization. There are other positive points. By working this way, you can work with your partners, with your homologues, to have a collective capacity. In those 30 minutes, we wanted to give you a rapid overview of the methodology. We can answer a couple of questions if you like. At the beginning, you said the service is a set of services in the SOC. Your framework it's targeting rather the response to incidents, the team that will react in accident, or does it integrate all the CERT services? All the services we listed are integrated. What you might not always find in some refrigeration is the CERT Intel, and depending the grade you want to improve in vulnerability. The methodology covers what we told you. We just showed it at an example of a major incident. There doesn't seem to be any other questions. We were probably very crystal clear. Thank you very much to all of you, and enjoy your afternoon. Bye.